My daughter threw me out of her Mother's Day celebration. So I threw her out of my bank account. Some people might call me cruel, but let me tell you the whole story, and then you decide. Because after 15 years of invisible sacrifice, I finally became visible in the only way that mattered. They say Mother's Day is meant to honor the woman who gave everything, the woman who sacrificed her comfort, her savings, her dreams so her children could have theirs. I was that woman. For 40 years, I measured my worth in patched books and counted lunches. As a librarian at the oldest high school in Portland, I learned to stretch a modest salary between mortgage payments, tuition fees, and unexpected car repairs. After my husband Robert died of a heart attack when the kids were still in middle school, I became everything: mother, father, provider, protector. I took the same lunch to work every single day. Half a sandwich, an apple, and water in a thermos. I saved the cafeteria money penny by penny for my retirement. Every dollar mattered. Every sacrifice counted. When Emma married Lucas 15 years ago, they couldn't afford the colonial house they dreamed of in the suburbs of Riverside. It was everything they wanted. 4 bedrooms, a proper dining room, that beautiful kitchen with marble countertops, and the schools were the best in the area. But the down payment was impossible for them. Their combined income barely covered their student loans and car payments. So I offered what I had: half of my retirement savings for the down payment, my name as a co-signer on the mortgage, and a monthly check that covered most of the payment. They never asked where the money came from. I never told them. I wanted them to feel successful without feeling diminished by my help. I wanted them to believe they had built their life on their own merit, their own hard work. It was my secret gift, my invisible hand, lifting them up while I lived small and quiet in my modest house across town. I thought that was what mothers did. Give without expectation, love without condition, sacrifice without recognition. For 13 Mother's Days, I came to their house with the same gifts: a homemade blackberry cake, Emma's favorite from her childhood, and fresh flowers from my garden. Nothing fancy, but grown with love. Each year, the reception grew colder. Each year, I felt a little more like an obligation than a guest. Last year, Emma left my cake untouched in the kitchen while she served a store-bought cheesecake. My bouquet landed in a plastic cup while professional flower arrangements decorated the dining table. When Sophia asked for another slice of Grandma's cake, Emma laughed and said, "You don't have to be polite, sweetheart. We have real dessert." Small gestures, small wounds, but each one was another brick in the wall between us. Still, I kept sending the monthly checks. I kept tending the roses I planted in their garden every spring. I believed that love given without expectation would eventually be returned. I believed that my daughter would see me, really see me, one day. This year, I baked a cake with special care: wild blackberries. I picked myself on the trails of the Blue Ridge Mountains. Some things are worth the effort, even when gratitude seems uncertain. I arranged the flowers in a beautiful bouquet, wrapped them carefully, and loaded everything into my car. The drive to Riverside took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of anticipation, of hoping this year might be different. I rang the doorbell at exactly 11 in the morning. Just like we had planned, Emma opened the door, and I saw it immediately in her face: the tightness around her mouth, the way her eyes didn't quite meet mine, the forced smile that never reached her eyes. "Mom," she said, not moving aside to let me in, "this year, you'd better not come." I stood there on the porch, holding my cake and flowers, and felt the world tilt slightly. "I'm sorry, what? It's just that Lucas's mother is here, and honestly, it's easier if it's just her this time. You understand, right? It's too complicated with both of you. Too complicated. As if I were a scheduling conflict. As if 15 years of financial support, of grandmothering, of unconditional love could be reduced to a complication. I brought your favorite cake," I said quietly, still processing what was happening. "That's sweet, Mom, but we already have dessert. Maybe you can drop it off another time." She glanced over her shoulder, back into the house where I could hear laughter and conversation, the life I had helped build but was no longer welcome to witness. "Emma, it's Mother's Day. I know, and I appreciate everything you do, but this year, it's just not going to work. I'll call you later, okay?" She reached for the flowers, took them from my hands like she was accepting a delivery, and stepped back. "Thanks for understanding." The door closed. Not slammed. That would have been honest at least. Just a quiet, firm closing, a polite dismissal. I stood there for a moment, staring at the oak door with its decorative wreath, and felt something inside me shift, not break. Breaking would have been too dramatic. This was colder, clearer. I walked back to my car with the cake still in my hands, got in, set the cake carefully on the passenger seat. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I smiled. Really smiled. Because in that moment of rejection, something crystallized in my mind. A simple, undeniable truth. If I wasn't welcome enough to celebrate Mother's Day with my daughter, I wasn't family enough to pay her mortgage. The drive home passed in a strange fog. Not sadness exactly. Something closer to clarity. I had spent 15 years invisible in Emma's life, except when my money was needed. I had accepted the shrinking space she gave me, the casual dismissals, the way I was always secondary to Lucas's mother, with her designer clothes and her loud opinions, and her constant reminders of how much everything cost. At home, I set the cake on my kitchen counter. It sat there, perfect and untouched, a monument to wasted effort. Through my window, I could see my neighbor Gertrude working in her garden. Gertrude, who had been divorced 3 times and had no patience for what she called emotional doormat syndrome. I made myself a cup of tea, chamomile with a touch of homemade honey. And while the tea steeped, I went to my study, the smallest room in the house, converted years ago for correspondence and organizing files for the Historical Society where I volunteered. I opened the bottom drawer of my filing cabinet. The folder labeled Emma and Lucas House was exactly where I had filed it 15 years ago. Inside were all the documents that had shaped my retirement. The mortgage cosigner agreement, the schedule of monthly transfers from my account to theirs, the property deed with my name next to Emma and Lucas Miller, papers that documented my silent, unannounced, unconditional commitment. Until now. I put on my reading glasses and went through the numbers that had governed my household for 15 years. Their mortgage payment was $2,200 monthly. Over 15 years, that was nearly $400,000. Not counting the initial down payment of $80,000. Money I never mentioned. Sacrifices of small comforts I never counted. Help given silently. Gratitude never expressed. Because the gift itself was never acknowledged. The afternoon light slanted through the blinds, casting striped shadows across the documents spread before me. Outside, Gertrude had finished her pruning and gone inside. The neighborhood settled into the quiet rhythm of a Saturday afternoon. Children's laughter in the distance. A car driving past. A lawnmower a few houses down. I gathered the papers carefully and put them back in the folder. Then I opened my laptop, the one Sophia and Max had taught me to use last Christmas. Patient with their grandmother's slow exploration of technology. My online banking loaded after 2 careful attempts with the password. The automatic transfer was programmed for the 15th of every month. It had been executing flawlessly, without interruption, for 180 months. A digital river of support, flowing from my account to theirs. A few clicks would stop that river, would end the agreement that had enabled their comfortable lifestyle, while I lived frugally and modestly. The cursor hovered over the button that said Cancel Automatic Payment. Not out of anger, the initial sting of Emma's rejection had faded. Now I felt something colder, clearer. This wasn't punishment, it was consequence. It was aligning my resources with the reality my daughter had declared. If I wasn't welcome, if I wasn't family enough to be invited on Mother's Day, perhaps I wasn't family enough to finance their mortgage either. A robin returned to my bird feeder outside the window, this time with its mate. They took turns pecking at the seeds, a dance of mutual support. I clicked the button. A confirmation screen appeared, asking if I was sure I wanted to cancel the recurring payment. Was I sure? After 15 years of automatic giving, automatic sacrifice, automatic acceptance of whatever place was assigned to me in Emma's life, was I sure? Yes, I said aloud into my empty study. I'm sure. I confirmed the cancellation and then opened my contact list. The name of Gerald Schneider, the lawyer who had helped me reorganize my finances after Robert's death, was still there. He had also guided me through the process when I co-signed years ago. It was too late to call his office, but I could leave a message. Monday would be early enough to start what came next. The cake still sat on my counter, perfect and untouched. Tomorrow, I decided, I would take it to the senior center, where I volunteered. The flowers would brighten someone else's day, and the money I had set aside for next month's mortgage payment would stay in my account. For the first time in 15 years, I would keep what I had earned for myself. I felt neither triumph nor satisfaction, just a strange lightness, like I had set down a heavy basket I had carried so long I had forgotten how heavy it was. The confirmation of the payment cancellation glowed on my laptop screen. The blue success message seemed to have a life of its own. I closed the laptop with a gentle click and sat still in my desk chair, hands folded in my lap like a schoolgirl waiting for instructions. Years as a librarian had taught me the value of silence, to observe rather than react, to let the silence speak for itself. And this silence said much about decisions made years ago and undone minutes before. The phone on my desk, an old-fashioned landline I kept despite Emma's constant mockery, seemed to watch me patiently like a confessor. Gerald's office was closed until Monday, but his answering service would take down what I said. It was the first step toward what would follow. I picked up the receiver and dialed, listening to the familiar tones until the professional voice of the service answered. "This is Elizabeth Watson," I said, surprised by the firmness in my voice. "I would like Mr. Schneider to call me back regarding the co-ownership agreement for the Miller House. It's not urgent, but I would appreciate speaking with him Monday morning if possible." Simple, almost banal words. Nothing suggested they marked the end of a 15-year agreement that had shaped 3 lives. 4, if you counted Lucas, who presumably had no idea where the mortgage payments really came from. After hanging up, I went into the kitchen on autopilot, put water on for tea. I didn't really want, but that offered the comforting routine. Through the window, I watched the afternoon fade in my garden. The azaleas Robert had planted the year before his heart attack bloomed faithfully every spring. The bird feeder was empty as dusk fell. The cake sat accusingly on the counter. I covered it more carefully with plastic wrap and put it in the refrigerator, unable to throw away something made with so much care despite its rejection. Tomorrow other hands would slice it, other voices would express gratitude. The thought brought more relief than sadness. The tea brewed, chamomile with a hint of homemade honey, while memories rose unbidden. Not from Emma's call today, but from another conversation 15 years ago that had set all of this in motion. "It's perfect, Mom," Emma had called out, her voice trembling with excitement as she led me through the empty interior of the colonial house in Riverside. 4 bedrooms, a proper dining room, this gorgeous kitchen, and the schools are the best in the area. I smiled, genuinely happy to see her so enthusiastic. At 32, my daughter had already developed such controlled reserve that sometimes she seemed older than me. This burst of joy was rare and precious. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I agreed, running my hand along the granite countertop. "But can you afford it?" Her face fell slightly. "That's the problem. We're pre-approved for the mortgage, but the down payment is killing us. We're short about $80,000. Without it, we lose the house." She looked at me with those eyes that had melted my heart since she was born. "Mom, I know it's a lot to ask, but is there any way you could help us? Just with the down payment? We'll handle everything else." Just the down payment. Just $80,000. Just half of everything I had saved over decades of careful living. I looked at my daughter's hopeful face and felt the familiar pull, the maternal instinct to fix, to provide, to make the path smooth. "Let me think about it," I said, but I already knew my answer. I had always known my answer. That night, I reviewed my finances, the retirement account I had built penny by penny, the savings that were supposed to ensure my security in old age. And I thought about Emma, about the grandchildren I hoped would come, about the family gatherings in that beautiful house. I called her the next morning. "I'll help with the down payment, and Emma, I want to be on the mortgage as a co-signer, just to help your application go through more smoothly." "Mom, that's too much." "Nonsense. What's a mother for?" I had said those words so lightly, not knowing they would define the next 15 years of my life. What I hadn't told Emma then, what I never told her, was that I also committed to covering most of their monthly mortgage payment. I set up an automatic transfer that would execute silently, invisibly, every month. They thought they were making it on their own. They thought their comfortable suburban life was built on Lucas's real estate career and Emma's interior design hobby. The truth was messier. Lucas's income was sporadic. Emma's design work barely covered her own shopping habits. Without my monthly contribution, they would have lost the house within the first year. But I kept that truth hidden. I wanted them to have pride in their accomplishments. I wanted Emma to feel successful. Looking back now, sipping my cooling tea in the kitchen where I had made thousands of modest meals while funding their extravagant lifestyle, I wondered if I had done her any favors. By making everything easy, had I made her entitled? By giving invisibly, had I made myself invisible? The evening stretched before me. No dinner invitation. No phone call asking where I was. Just silence. I made myself a simple meal, scrambled eggs and toast, the kind of dinner I had eaten countless times while the money that could have bought better food flowed to Riverside. After dinner, I took my book to the front porch. The spring air was pleasant, and the neighborhood was settling into its Saturday evening rhythm. Across the street, the Anderson family was loading wrapped packages into their car, presumably heading to their daughter's house in the next town. Everyone celebrating mothers. Everyone except me. My phone sat silent on the little table beside me. Sophia or Max might call. They were old enough now, 13 and 11, to have their own phones, their own ability to reach out without their mother's mediation. Last year, they had given me handmade cards and shy hugs before Emma redirected their attention to Lucas's mother and her store-bought gifts. The memory brought an unexpected sting, not because of my exclusion, but because of what the children were learning through their mother's example. That some people are disposable, that love can be conditional, that generosity need not be acknowledged or reciprocated. A soft notification sound came from my phone. Not a call, but a Facebook alert, an app Sophia had installed for me. "So you can see our photos, Grandma," she had said during her last visit. I rarely looked at it. It felt loud and artificial in its forced intimacy, but today something made me check. Emma's post appeared at the top of what Sophia called my wall. A professional-looking photo of their family gathered around an elegant brunch table, apparently on the terrace of a country club. Lucas's parents flanked the group, his mother resplendent in a designer outfit I recognized from the many times she had mentioned its price. Emma and Lucas posed with practiced smiles. Sophia and Max looked uncomfortable but obedient, dressed in formal clothes I had never seen before. The caption read, "Celebrating Mother's Day with our true family. So grateful for those who are always meaningfully present. Blessed and thankful. True family." The phrase hit me like a hammer blow. A deliberate exclusion? Impossible to misunderstand. This wasn't just absence. This was erasure. Not forgetting, but conscious rejection. There was theatricality in Emma's post. A message crafted for me, or perhaps for herself. A line drawn. A declaration made public. "Looks like a stiff affair." Gertrude's voice came from the sidewalk. She wore her gardening clothes, pruning shears in one hand, a small colorful bouquet in the other. She must have seen something in my face because she walked up to my porch without invitation. "What's happened?" I showed her the phone. Gertrude read the post, her expression darkening. "True family? After everything you've done for that girl?" She handed back the phone. "Elizabeth, that's not just thoughtless, that's cruel. She uninvited me this morning," I heard myself say. "Told me not to come." Gertrude sat down in the other chair without asking. "And what did you do?" "I canceled the mortgage payment." For a moment, Gertrude just stared at me. Then a slow smile spread across her weathered face. "Well, I'll be damned." Elizabeth Watson finally grew a spine. "That's not fair," I protested without heat. "I've always tried to respect Emma's independence, to help without controlling." "And how has that worked out for you?" Gertrude asked, not unkindly. "She takes your money, your time with the grandchildren when it suits her, your hands for her prize-winning roses, and then leaves you out on Mother's Day like you're a spare accessory." Put so bluntly, the pattern was undeniable. Each year, my presence had shrunk while my contributions remained constant. Invisible support, invisible presence, and finally, complete invisibility. "I keep thinking about Robert," I said quietly. "What he would think of all this." Gertrude's expression softened. "That man worshipped you, Elizabeth. He would be furious at how your daughter treats you. He always said you were too accommodating with Emma, tried too hard to smooth her path." I took a sip of tea, finding unexpected comfort in its warmth. The last thing he said to me coherently in the hospital was to make me promise to take care of her. But he also said, "Don't let her walk all over you." "Wise man," Gertrude nodded. "So what happens Monday when that Gerald calls you back?" I set down my cup. The plan was forming even as I spoke it aloud. "I'm going to ask him to drop the necessary documents, to remove my name from the deed, and release me from the mortgage. Either they refinance without me, or they face the consequences." "Foreclosure eventually," Gertrude said. The word sounded foreign and sharp in my mouth. "They won't be able to cover the payments without my contribution. Lucas's real estate business has been going downhill since the market turned, and Emma's interior design is more hobby than profession. Gertrude whistled softly. That's going to cause a storm, Elizabeth. I know, and I did. I could already imagine the accusations, the tears, the manipulation attempts that would surely follow. But I keep thinking about what Emma said today, that I'm not really welcome, not family enough for Mother's Day. Well, then I'm not family enough to pay her mortgage either. Gertrude gripped my hand briefly, an unusual gesture for a woman as sparing with physical affection as she was generous with blunt honesty. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Late, but finally right. Thank you, I replied, grateful for validation I hadn't known I needed. For everything. Oh, go on, she shooed me, uncomfortable with tenderness. Call me tomorrow. I want to know how you spend your first free Mother's Day in 15 years. On the walk back to my house, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and resolve. The path was familiar, just a few steps between neighboring homes. But the woman taking those steps was different from the one who had stood paralyzed in her kitchen hours earlier. Same aged body, same careful gait, but something fundamental had shifted inside. A reclamation of courage that had been postponed too long in the name of maternal love. Inside, I prepared for bed with my usual rituals, washing my face, brushing my teeth, reading a chapter of the novel on my nightstand to settle my mind. A family photo watched me from the nightstand. Emma and Lucas with the children at Christmas a few years ago, all smiling in coordinated outfits against a professionally decorated background. I had been there that day, though my presence wasn't captured in any of the photos that ended up in frames or on social media. Tomorrow would be Mother's Day. I would spend it without a word from my daughter for the first time in decades. But perhaps, I thought as sleep overtook me, it would also be the first day of a new phase between us. One based on truth rather than silent sacrifice. On mutual respect rather than one-sided devotion. That thought accompanied me into dreams, neither comforting nor tormenting. Simply there, a reality as undeniable as the documents in my desk drawer, as undeniable as the words Emma had spoken so casually. This year, you're not really welcome. Perhaps I never really was. Mother's Day dawned with almost theatrical perfection. Sunshine stealing through the bedroom windows, birds singing their spring symphony in the oak tree in the yard, the scent of spring flowers drifting through the cracked window, a picture-perfect morning for a day I would spend alone. I stayed in bed longer than usual. The absence of plans created a strange emptiness in my normally structured day. No arrival time at Emma's by 11. No careful transport of a still-warm cake to the car. No steeling myself to put on a neutral, friendly face when Lucas's mother made her subtle comments about my comfortable shoes or plain jewelry. When I finally rose, I maintained my morning routine with extra care. Even if it was a small gesture, it was an act of self-respect. My best lavender blouse, bought last year in a rare moment of extravagance, and pressed slacks replaced the casual Sunday clothes. If I was going to spend this Mother's Day alone, I would do it with dignity. After breakfast, I took my coffee to the front porch, settling into the white wicker chair I had brought from the family home to this smaller one. The neighborhood was quiet, most families at church or already gathered for celebrations. Across the street, the Schmidt family was loading gift-wrapped packages into their car, presumably heading to their daughter's place in the next county. My phone remained silent on the small table beside me. Sophia or Max would call. They were old enough now, with their own phones, their own ability to reach out without their mother's filter. Last year, they had given me handmade cards and shy hugs before Emma had redirected their attention to Lucas's mother with her purchased gifts and loud enthusiasm. But the phone stayed quiet, and with each passing hour, I understood more clearly what Emma had done. She hadn't just uninvited me, she had erased me, told the children I was busy, told them Grandma had other plans, woven a story that made my absence seem voluntary rather than forced. By noon, I had made my decision. I changed into comfortable clothes, loaded the blackberry cake and flowers into my car, and drove to Riverside Senior Center. The volunteers there greeted me with surprise and delight. "Elizabeth, we didn't expect you today." "Change of plans," I said simply, setting the cake on their community table. I thought the residents might enjoy some homemade dessert. The joy on their faces as they cut into that cake, the genuine appreciation, the warmth of their gratitude, it filled something in me that had been empty for a very long time. These near strangers valued what my own daughter had dismissed. These elderly residents, some with no family left at all, treated me with more respect than the child I had sacrificed everything for. I stayed through the afternoon, playing cards with residents, listening to their stories, sharing my flowers among several rooms. When I finally left, one of the older women, Margaret, who rarely spoke, caught my hand. "Thank you for being here," she whispered. "You didn't have to be." "Neither did you," I replied, squeezing back. "But I'm glad we both were." Driving home, I felt something shift. The hurt was still there. Yes, the rejection still stung. But underneath it was something stronger. A growing certainty that I had done the right thing. That love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's self-destruction dressed up as virtue. That evening, I sat in my garden as the sun set, watching the light fade through the roses I had planted years ago. My phone finally rang at 7:30. Not Emma, Sophia. Grandma. Her voice was small, uncertain. "Hello, sweetheart. Happy Mother's Day to you too, for when you're a mother someday." A pause. "Mom said you were busy today, that you had other plans." I closed my eyes. The lie was so predictable, so casually cruel. Did she? Were you? Busy, I mean. This was the moment. I could lie too, could make it easy for Emma, could protect my daughter from the consequences of her choices, or I could tell Sophia the truth, age appropriately, and trust that she was old enough to understand. "I wasn't invited this year, sweetheart. Your mom asked me not to come." Silence on the line. Then, in a smaller voice, "Why?" Sometimes adults make decisions that are hard to understand, but I want you to know it has nothing to do with you or Max. I love you both more than anything. That will never change, no matter where I spend Mother's Day. "That's not fair." Her voice cracked slightly. "You're my grandma. You should have been here. Thank you for saying that, honey. It means the world to me. Can we come visit you? Me and Max? Maybe next weekend?" My heart squeezed. I would love that more than anything. "Anytime you want to come, my door is open." After we hung up, I sat with the phone in my lap, feeling the weight of what was coming. Emma would be furious that I had told Sophia the truth. But I was done protecting my daughter from reality, done making everything smooth and easy, while I absorbed all the hurt. The documents from Gerald's office arrived by courier Monday afternoon at exactly 2:45. A young woman with a tablet for signatures handed me a large envelope containing my financial emancipation. I signed where she indicated, thanked her, and closed the door like someone lowering the curtain on the final act of a long maternal performance. The rest of the day passed in mundane activities. I helped with the after-school library program, I tended my garden, I made a simple dinner. If I checked my phone more often than usual, waiting for calls that didn't come, it was a weakness I kept to myself. 3 days from now, the bank notification would arrive at Emma and Lucas's house. 3 days to doubt, to hesitate, to become again the accommodating mother who had supported them without recognition for 15 years. But I didn't hesitate. Instead, I wrote letters to each of my grandchildren, expressing my unconditional love and explaining in age-appropriate words that adults sometimes make decisions that affect the family. I assured them that nothing that happened was their fault, nor should they try to fix it. I mailed the letters with delivery confirmation, ensuring they would arrive after the bank notification, but before Emma could intercept them. The storm broke 5 days later. I was cutting roses when Gertrude appeared on the other side of our shared fence, phone in hand. "Brace yourself. Your daughter just dropped a bomb on Facebook." My stomach clenched, but my voice stayed steady. "What kind of bomb?" "The public drama kind. Betrayal, abandonment. How can a mother do this to her children? You should see it before the calls start." As if her warning had summoned it, my phone began ringing inside the house. I pulled off my gardening gloves deliberately, brushed the dirt from my knees, and went inside without rush or fear. Just prepared. "How could you do this?" Emma's voice exploded from the other end. No greeting, just accusation. "We got a letter saying you've withdrawn from the mortgage and the property. This can't be real. Fix this, Mom." The old Elizabeth would have soothed, apologized, done anything to repair what upset her daughter. The woman I had become breathed deeply instead of giving in. "It's not a mistake, Emma. I've ended my financial support and my stake as co-owner." "You've what?" Disbelief colored her voice. "Why would you do that? How could you do this to us?" "If I remember correctly, your exact words on Mother's Day were that I wasn't really welcome, not family enough to join the celebration." My voice remained calm, focused on facts, not accusations. "I've simply aligned my financial involvement with that reality." Silence on the line, followed by an incredulous snort. This is about the stupid brunch? Seriously, you're punishing us because we didn't invite you to one single event? It's not punishment, Emma, it's consequence. For years of taking without acknowledgement, for an exclusion that went from exception to habit, for treating me like I'm only valuable when I'm useful. Mom, you can't do this. We can't afford the mortgage without your help. Her voice shifted from anger to panic. The bank says we're already behind. They're threatening foreclosure if we don't fix the situation immediately. I understand exactly how mortgage contracts work, I replied, surprised by my own calm. You'll need to find new financing or consider selling the house. Sell our house. Are you insane? The kids, the school, our friends, everything is here. How can you be so cruel? The question hung between us. So similar to what Gertrude had told me about, so revealing in its assumption that setting boundaries was an act of cruelty rather than health. I've supported your family consistently for 15 years, Emma, without recognition, without gratitude, while I was increasingly excluded from your lives except when it suited you. I paused, choosing my next words carefully. This arrangement, this one-sided agreement is over. What happens now is up to you and Lucas. Lucas is devastated, she said, switching tactics. He had no idea. How could you hide this all these years? That was your choice, not mine. I never demanded it be kept secret. More silence, thicker this time, than with cold calculation. The kids will never forgive you for taking away their home. The threat, because that's what it was, hit precisely where it was meant to. But my love for Sophia and Max was too real to be used as a weapon against me. I've already written to them, I answered. I've explained that adults sometimes make difficult decisions, and that my love for them remains unchanged no matter where they live. You had no right to contact them. Emma's voice shot up again. This is our family business, and we'll handle it. Sophia and Max are my grandchildren. Emma, that connection exists beyond your convenience. The conversation dragged on for another 10 minutes. Accusations and defenses, threats and boundaries. It didn't end with resolution, but with exhaustion. Emma hung up after one final attempt at manipulation. Fine, do what you want, but don't expect us to let you back into our lives when you realize what you've done. The irony of that statement, coming from the daughter who had locked me out first, was almost funny. Almost. I sat with the phone in my hand for a long moment after the call ended. The late afternoon sun streamed through my kitchen windows, illuminating dust motes in the air. Outside, a cardinal sang from the oak tree. Life continued, indifferent to our human dramas. Gertrude appeared at my back door minutes later, letting herself in as she often did. She took one look at my face and went straight to the kettle. Tea first, then talking, she declared, and I was grateful for her brusque kindness. When we were settled at my kitchen table with steaming cups and the brownies she had brought, she fixed me with her sharp gaze. How bad was it? About what I expected. Anger, panic, threats involving the grandchildren. And how do you feel? I considered the question honestly. Sad, scared, but also relieved. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. You've been carrying this weight so long you forgot it was there. Now that you've set it down, you can finally breathe. She says Lucas is devastated, that he never knew about my contributions. Gertrude snorted. That man's pride is going to take a beating, finding out his comfortable life was subsidized by his mother-in-law for 15 years? That'll sting. I never meant to humiliate him. You didn't. Emma did by lying to him all this time. You just stopped enabling her lies. Gertrude reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Elizabeth, you've spent your whole life protecting your daughter from reality. Maybe it's time she faced some. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and thought about the little girl Emma had been. The bright, curious child who collected rocks and insisted on reading by herself before she started school. The teenager who had cried on my shoulder when her first boyfriend broke her heart. The young woman who had called me every day during her first year of college. When had we lost that? When had I become just a resource to be managed rather than a mother to be loved? Was it gradual, or had there been a specific moment when the shift occurred? I couldn't pinpoint it. Perhaps it had been so slow, so subtle, that neither of us had noticed until the distance between us was a chasm. Or perhaps I had noticed and chosen not to see. Chose to believe that if I just gave more, loved more, sacrificed more, eventually Emma would see me, would value me, would love me the way I loved her. The realization that hit me then was both freeing and devastating. I had been trying to earn my daughter's love by being useful, by being necessary. And in doing so, I had made myself into exactly what she treated me as. A resource, not a person. A means to an end, not an end in myself. Tuesday morning brought another Facebook post from Emma. I didn't look at it myself, but Gertrude called to read it to me. "She's doubling down," Gertrude said, her voice tight with anger, talking about cruel mothers who abandon their families in times of need. "She's painting herself as the victim and you as some kind of monster." "Let her," I said, and meant it. "Anyone who knows me will see through it, and those who don't know me well enough to question her narrative, their opinion doesn't matter." Elizabeth Watson. "I'm proud of you." "Thank you, Gertrude. That means more than you know." The supportive messages started arriving by afternoon. Friends from the library, members of the Historical Society, neighbors who had watched me struggle as a single mother and work multiple jobs to support Emma through college. They had seen my devotion, they had witnessed my sacrifice, and they weren't buying Emma's victim narrative. One message stood out. It was from Patricia, Emma's godmother, who I hadn't spoken to in years after Emma had gradually pushed her out of our lives too. "Elizabeth, I've seen Emma's posts. I want you to know I support you completely. That girl has needed boundaries for years, and you're the bravest person I know for finally setting them. Stay strong. You deserve so much better than how she's treated you." I cried reading that message. Not sad tears, but something more complicated. Grief for the relationship I had tried so hard to preserve. Relief that I wasn't crazy for feeling hurt. Gratitude that someone saw me, really saw me, and validated my worth. Wednesday brought an unexpected visitor. I was in my garden deadheading the roses when a car pulled into my driveway. Lucas stepped out, alone. His face was haggard, his suit rumpled in a way that was unusual for a man who prided himself on professional appearance. "Elizabeth," he said, walking toward me with hesitant steps. "Can we talk?" I set down my pruning shears and gestured to the patio table. "Would you like some iced tea?" "Please." I brought out 2 glasses and sat across from him, waiting. Lucas had always been harder to read than Emma. More controlled, more careful with his words. But today, that control was cracking. "I didn't know," he said finally. "About the mortgage payments. About any of it. Emma told me her father had left her some money, that it was family inheritance covering part of our payment. I never questioned it. I know you didn't. And I did know. Emma had spun her web carefully, maintaining the illusion of their independence, while quietly taking my money month after month. Why didn't you tell me?" His voice held genuine confusion, even hurt. 15 years, Elizabeth. 15 years you've been supporting us, and I had no idea. It was Emma's choice to keep it from you. I offered help and she accepted it. How she explained it to you was her decision. But you could have told me. At any point you could have said something. Could I? I met his eyes steadily. Would you have believed me over your wife? Would you have wanted to know that your comfortable life, your successful image, was built on your mother-in-law's sacrifice? He flinched. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Lucas. But it's true. He was quiet for a long moment, staring into his glass. The business has been struggling. For years now. I kept thinking it would turn around, that the market would improve. Emma's design work brings in almost nothing. We've been living on credit cards, taking out loans. Without your payments, we can't make it. The bank has already started foreclosure proceedings. I'm sorry that's happening to you. Truly I am. But it's not my responsibility to fix anymore. The kids, Elizabeth, Sophia and Max, they're terrified. They don't understand why we have to leave their home, their school, their friends. Sophia cried herself to sleep last night, asking what she did wrong. The knife twisted in my heart, exactly as he intended. And what did you tell her? What could I tell her? That her grandmother decided to pull the rug out from under us with no warning? I took a breath, steadying myself. Did you tell her that her mother uninvited me from Mother's Day? That after 15 years of silent support, I was told I wasn't welcome, wasn't really family? Did you explain that I gave half my retirement savings for your down payment? That I've paid over $400,000 toward your mortgage while living on a librarian's pension? Lucas looked stunned. Plus the initial $80,000 down payment. Plus all the hours I spent in your garden, all the birthday gifts, all the times I babysat while you two went on vacation. I've given everything, Lucas, and I was given invisibility in return. Emma said you were too busy to come on Mother's Day, that you had plans at the senior center. Of course she had. The lies were so easy for her, so automatic. Lucas, your wife looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't welcome, that it was too complicated having both mothers there, that she'd call me later. She closed the door in my face while I stood on your porch, holding a homemade cake and flowers from my garden. I watched the truth sink into his face, watched him realize the depth of his wife's deception, not just about the money, but about everything. I didn't know, he repeated, but this time it sounded hollow, even to him. Maybe you didn't want to know. Maybe it was easier not to ask questions about where the money came from, or why I was increasingly absent from family events. Maybe you saw what Emma was doing and chose to look away because it benefited you. That's not true. I'm not that person. Then what person are you, Lucas? Because the person I'm looking at right now benefited from 15 years of my sacrifice without ever once thanking me, asking about me, or standing up for me when Emma marginalized me. So tell me, who are you? He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the patio. I came here hoping we could work something out, that you'd reconsider for the sake of the kids. The children are not leverage. They are the only reason I'm still willing to have this conversation. I love Sophia and Max more than anything, but that love doesn't obligate me to continue funding their parents' irresponsible lifestyle. Irresponsible? His voice rose. We're trying to give them a good life, a stable home in a good neighborhood with good schools, a life you can't afford, stability built on someone else's sacrifice. Lucas, I'm not the villain here. I'm the person who finally stopped enabling you both to live beyond your means. So what are we supposed to do? Where are we supposed to go? You're both intelligent adults. You'll figure it out. Get an apartment that fits your actual budget. Downsize. Live within your means, like millions of other families do. Lucas, this might be the best thing that ever happened to you. You'll finally build a life that's truly yours, not one propped up by someone else's money. Emma will never forgive you for this. I'm learning to live with that possibility. He left without another word, and I sat alone on my patio watching the afternoon shadows lengthen. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up my glass. Setting boundaries was harder than I'd imagined, not because I doubted my decision, but because seeing the real consequences, the real pain it caused, was difficult even when it was necessary. That evening Sophia called again. Grandma, Dad says we're going to have to move. Is that true? It might be, sweetheart. Sometimes families need to make changes, but I don't want to leave my school. All my friends are here. I know, honey, change is scary, but you know what? You're strong enough to handle it, and you'll make new friends. You're so good at that. Mom says it's your fault, that you're being mean. I closed my eyes. Emma was poisoning my grandchildren against me, using them as weapons in a war I never wanted to fight. Sophia, I need you to know something. Your mom and I are having grown-up problems. But my love for you and Max will never ever change. No matter what happens, no matter where you live, I'm always here for you. Always. Promise. I promise with all my heart. After we hung up, I allowed myself to cry. For the first time since this all began, I let the tears come. Not for Emma, who had made her choices, not for Lucas, who had benefited from my silence, but for two innocent children who were learning too young that family could be conditional, that love could be weaponized, that the people you trust most could hurt you deepest. The next week was surreal. Emma's social media campaign intensified. She posted about the heartless abandonment she was experiencing. She shared articles about elder abuse, implying I was somehow the abusive one. She rallied her friends to comment on every post with sympathy and outrage, but something unexpected happened. The narrative she tried to control started slipping. People who knew our history began commenting. Patricia, Emma's godmother, posted a detailed account of how Emma had gradually isolated herself from anyone who might hold her accountable. Other mothers from the library where I'd worked for decades shared their own observations of Emma's entitled behavior over the years. The tide turned when one of Emma's former friends, someone I barely knew, posted a long comment about how Emma had bragged at a party about managing her mother's guilt to get money, about how she laughed about my homemade gifts being embarrassingly cheap, about how she called me pathetically desperate for attention. Emma deleted that comment within minutes, but not before dozens of people had screenshot it and shared it. The truth was leaking out, and no amount of damage control could stop it. By the end of the week, Emma had deleted all her posts and made her profile private. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired and sad that it had come to this, that my daughter's first instinct had been to lie, to manipulate, to destroy rather than to reflect, to apologize, to grow. 2 weeks after Mother's Day, Gerald Schneider called with an update. The property documents have been finalized. Your name has been removed from the deed, and you're released from the mortgage obligation. The bank has issued formal foreclosure proceedings to the Millers. They have 90 days to either refinance or sell. Thank you, Gerald. Elizabeth, if I may say so, this took courage. I've seen too many parents financially devastated by adult children who take advantage. You did the right thing. After the call, I sat in my study and looked at the folder that had governed 15 years of my life. Then I filed it away in the back of the cabinet. That chapter was closed. The following Sunday, my doorbell rang at 9 in the morning. I opened it to find Sophia and Max standing there with Lucas behind them. The children were holding overnight bags. Dad said we could spend the day with you, Sophia said, a hint of defiance in her voice that told me Emma hadn't approved this visit. If that's okay? It's more than okay. It's wonderful. I looked past them to Lucas, who gave me a small nod. They need their grandmother. He said simply, "Whatever is happening between you and Emma, the kids shouldn't suffer for it. I'll pick them up tomorrow afternoon." Thank you, Lucas. We spent a perfect day together. I taught them how to make my blackberry cake from scratch. We worked in the garden, their hands getting dirty as they helped me plant new roses. We played the board games they'd always loved, and at night, tucked into sleeping bags in my living room, they told me their fears and their hopes, and I listened and loved them exactly as they were. When Lucas picked them up the next day, both children hugged me fiercely. "Can we come back next weekend?" Max asked. "Anytime you want, sweetheart. My door is always open." After they left, I found a note tucked under one of the sleeping bags. Sophia's careful handwriting read, "Grandma, Mom says you don't love us anymore because you took away our house, but I know that's not true. You love us more than anything. I see it in your eyes. Don't worry, I'll make sure Max knows too. Love, Sophia. P.S. Your cake is way better than the store kind." I held that note and cried again, but this time the tears were different. They were bittersweet, yes, but underneath the pain was something solid and real. My grandchildren knew the truth. Despite Emma's attempts to poison them against me, they saw through it. Children are wiser than we give them credit for. A month passed. Emma and Lucas listed the house at a price well below market value, desperate for a quick sale. They found an apartment in a less expensive part of town, closer to the city, smaller but manageable. Lucas got a job with a more stable real estate firm, accepting a salary position rather than commission only. Emma started working part-time at a design studio, real work with real income. I heard all this through Lucas, who had started calling me weekly to arrange the children's visits. Emma still refused to speak to me. According to Lucas, she had told everyone who would listen that I was dead to her, that she would never forgive me, that what I had done was unforgivable. And strangely, I found I could live with that. Not happily, not without grief, but without the crushing guilt I once would have felt. Because I had done nothing wrong. I had simply stopped doing something right at my own expense. The historical society where I volunteered asked me to lead a project documenting local women's history. I said yes. I had time now, time that wasn't consumed by worry about Emma or scrambling to cover her expenses. I had energy that wasn't drained by walking on eggshells around her moods. I started taking an oil painting class at the community college, something I had wanted to do for years but never had the money or time for. My first attempts were terrible, but I didn't care. I was learning something new, challenging myself, growing. Gertrude and I started a tradition of Friday dinners, taking turns cooking. She introduced me to her book club, a rowdy group of women in their 60s and 70s who drank wine and argued passionately about literature and life. I felt more at home with them in weeks than I had in years of family gatherings at Emma's house. Sophia and Max visited every other weekend. Sometimes Lucas brought them, sometimes they took the bus on their own. Proud of their new independence, we fell into easy rhythms, baking together, gardening together, talking about everything and nothing. One day, Max said something that broke my heart and healed it at the same time. "Grandma, I like our new apartment. It's smaller, but it feels more real, like we're actually a family now instead of just pretending." "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "In the old house, Mom and Dad were always stressed about money, but pretending they weren't. They fought a lot when they thought we couldn't hear. Now they still stress about money, but at least they're honest about it. And they fight less because they're not trying to keep up with the neighbors or whatever." Children see so much more than we realize. They had known on some level that their parents' life was unsustainable, and the collapse I had precipitated, painful as it was, had forced Emma and Lucas to build something more authentic. 3 months after Mother's Day, I received a letter, not from Emma, but from Lucas. He wrote about how hard the transition had been, but also how necessary. How he had been living in denial about their financial situation for years, always thinking things would turn around. How Emma's spending habits had been out of control, subsidized by credit cards and my money. The move forced us to confront reality, he wrote. We're living within our means for the first time in our marriage. It's humbling and sometimes embarrassing, but it's also freeing. We're not drowning anymore. Emma is struggling with the change more than I am, but I see glimpses of the woman I married coming back. The one who wasn't consumed by keeping up appearances. He ended the letter with an apology. I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening. Sorry I didn't appreciate your sacrifice. Sorry I didn't stand up for you when Emma marginalized you. You deserved better from both of us. I wrote back thanking him for his honesty. I told him I forgave him and that I hoped Emma would find her way to peace eventually. But I also made clear that forgiveness didn't mean returning to the old patterns. I would always be there for Sophia and Max, but my relationship with Emma would have to be rebuilt on different terms if it was ever rebuilt at all. The holidays approached, and with them came the inevitable question. Lucas called to ask if I would consider coming to Thanksgiving dinner. Emma says she can tolerate you being there if it means the kids have a normal holiday. Tell Emma thank you, but no. Elizabeth, please. For the kids. Lucas. I love those children more than my own life. But I won't be tolerated in my daughter's presence. I won't sit at a table where I'm an unwanted obligation. The children are welcome here, any time, including Thanksgiving. You're welcome too. But I won't accept crumbs of conditional acceptance. He was quiet for a moment. I understand, and for what it's worth, I think you're right. Thanksgiving Day, I hosted dinner at my small house. Gertrude came, along with 3 other women from my book club, whose families were far away. Patricia, Emma's godmother, drove 2 hours to join us, and Lucas brought Sophia and Max in the morning, picked them up after dinner at Emma's family gathering, and brought them back to spend the night with me. It wasn't a traditional holiday, but it was honest and warm and full of genuine affection. We laughed until we cried over Gertrude's terrible jokes. We shared stories about our lives. We played charades after dinner. And when Sophia helped me clean up the kitchen, she said, "This is the best Thanksgiving I've ever had, Grandma." Why, sweetheart? Because everyone here actually wants to be here. Nobody's fake. Nobody's pretending. That night, after the children were asleep and my guests had gone home, I stood in my kitchen washing the last of the dishes and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Complete, uncomplicated peace. Not happiness exactly, because the grief of Emma's rejection was still there, but peace underneath it. The peace of living authentically, of honoring my own worth, of refusing to make myself small so others could feel big. 6 months after Mother's Day, on a cold November afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Emma standing there. No Lucas, no children, just my daughter looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen her. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice small. I stepped aside without speaking, leading her to the living room. We sat in chairs facing each other, the coffee table between us like a demilitarized zone. "I've been in therapy," Emma said finally. Lucas insisted. Said it was couples counseling or divorce. During our sessions, a lot of things came up. About me, about how I treated you, about the money. I waited, saying nothing. My therapist asked me to do an exercise, to write down everything you'd done for me over the years. Not just the financial stuff, but everything. The time you spent, the sacrifices you made. It took me 3 weeks to finish the list. She pulled a folded paper from her purse, opened it. 47 pages. Her voice cracked. "Mom, I read this list and I didn't recognize myself. I didn't recognize the person who could take all of this and not only fail to appreciate it, but actively push you away. Who could humiliate you, dismiss your gifts, exclude you from family events while still taking your money every month." Tears were streaming down her face now. I was so focused on looking successful, on maintaining the image of having it all together, that I turned you into nothing but a resource, a means to an end. I erased your personhood because acknowledging what you were doing for me would have meant acknowledging that I wasn't as successful as I pretended to be. "Emma," I started, but she held up her hand. "Please, let me finish. I need to say this. What I did on Mother's Day, that wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of treating you terribly, and you finally had enough. You set a boundary, and I responded by trying to destroy you publicly because I couldn't handle the truth of what I'd become." She looked at me directly, her eyes red and swollen. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for taking your money and never acknowledging it. I'm sorry for taking your time and never valuing it. I'm sorry for making you feel invisible and unwelcome. I'm sorry for trying to turn your grandchildren against you. I'm sorry for being the kind of daughter who would close the door in her mother's face on Mother's Day." The apology I had never expected to hear hung in the air between us. I felt tears on my own cheeks. "Thank you for saying that," I said quietly. "It means more than you know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see what I did. I see who I became, and I'm trying to be better." "Emma, look at me." I waited until her eyes met mine. "I forgive you. I've forgiven you. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean going back to how things were. I know. I don't want to go back to how things were. That version of us was toxic. I was toxic." She wiped her eyes. "My therapist says I have a lot of work to do on myself, on why I need external validation so badly that I'll sacrifice anything, including my relationship with my mother, to maintain an image." "That's good, Emma. That's really good that you're doing that work. Lucas and I are doing better. The financial pressure is less now that we're living within our means. We fight less. We're more honest with each other. And the kids, they're adjusting. It's been hard for them. But I think Max was right. Our life is more real now. Max is a wise boy. He gets that from you." She smiled sadly. "They both do. Sophia told me what you said to her, about your love never changing no matter what. Thank you for that. Thank you for being constant when I was anything but." We talked for 2 more hours. Not solving everything, not erasing the hurt, but beginning the slow process of rebuilding a relationship on honesty instead of enabling, on mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. When Emma left, she hugged me at the door. A real hug, not the perfunctory kind we'd exchanged for years. "I love you, Mom. I know I haven't shown it, but I do. I always have. I love you too, sweetheart. Always." I watched her drive away and felt something shift again inside me. Not a return to the old patterns, but an opening to something new, something healthier. Maybe Emma would continue the work she'd started. Maybe she wouldn't. But either way, I knew now that my worth wasn't determined by her choices. A year after that Mother's Day, Emma called to invite me to brunch. Just us. No Lucas. No kids. I accepted. We met at a small cafe downtown, and as we talked over coffee and croissants, I saw real change in my daughter. She was humbler, more thoughtful, more present. "I want to pay you back," she said. "Not all at once, obviously, but Lucas and I have worked out a plan. We're going to repay the money you gave us for the house. It'll take years, but we want to do it." "Emma, that's not necessary." "Yes, it is. For me it is. I need to make this right in whatever ways I can." I didn't argue further. If she needed this for her own healing, I wouldn't take that from her. That Mother's Day, a year after the one that changed everything, I woke to find my porch covered in flowers, wild blackberries in a basket with a note. I picked these myself. "Love, Emma." Inside, a homemade card from Sophia and Max, and a text from Lucas. "Thank you for teaching us all what boundaries and self-respect look like." Emma picked me up at 10, and we drove to her apartment where the whole family was waiting. The brunch was simple, nothing fancy, but it was full of genuine warmth. Emma had made my favorite quiche. Lucas had actually helped cook. The children were relaxed and happy. "I know we can't give you back the years I wasted," Emma said during dessert in front of everyone. "But I want you to know that I see you now, Mom. I see your worth. I see your sacrifice. And I'm grateful every single day that you loved me enough to set boundaries when I couldn't set them for myself." Sophia raised her juice glass. "To Grandma, the strongest person I know." We all raised our glasses, and I looked around the table at my imperfect, healing family and felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Hope. Not for some idealized future, but for the messy, authentic, real relationships we were building together. That afternoon, back at my house, I sat in my garden with a cup of tea and thought about the journey of the past year. The pain, the growth, the loss, and the unexpected gains. I had lost the illusion of a perfect relationship with my daughter, but I had gained something more valuable, a real one. I thought about the woman I had been a year ago, the one who measured her worth in how useful she was to others, the one who believed love meant sacrificing herself completely, the one who stood on Emma's porch, holding rejected gifts and still wondering how to make herself more acceptable. That woman was gone. In her place was someone harder. Yes, but also freer. Someone who knew her worth wasn't negotiable. Someone who understood that the most loving thing you can do, sometimes, is to let people face the natural consequences of their choices. My phone buzzed with a text from Gertrude. "How was it?" "Better than I expected," I typed back. "Real. Good. Friday dinner at my place. I'm making that terrible casserole you pretend to like." I laughed out loud. "I actually do like it. Liar. But I love you anyway." As the sun set over my garden, I thought about what I would say if I could talk to the woman I'd been a year ago. The one agonizing over whether to click that cancel button. The one terrified of her daughter's rejection. I would tell her, click it. Set the boundary. Respect yourself. Yes, it will hurt. Yes, there will be consequences. Yes, you will spend nights wondering if you did the right thing. But you will survive. More than survive, you will discover who you are when you're not bending yourself into shapes designed to fit other people's needs. You will learn that love without boundaries isn't love at all, that sacrifice without recognition becomes resentment, that giving until you're empty doesn't fill anyone else up, it just leaves everyone depleted. You will discover that you are enough, just as you are, that your worth isn't determined by how useful you are or how much you can give, that being seen and valued for who you are, not what you provide, is not too much to ask. And most importantly, you will learn that sometimes the most loving thing a mother can do is teach her child that actions have consequences, that relationships require reciprocity, and that respect is not optional. The roses Robert planted years ago were blooming again, faithful as always. The bird feeder was full, attracting cardinals and blue jays. My garden was exactly as I wanted it, tended with care, growing in its own time. Inside, my small house held everything I needed. Books I wanted to read, paint supplies for my classes, photos of Sophia and Max on every surface, a calendar filled with volunteer work, book club meetings and visits with friends who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. It wasn't the life I had imagined a year ago. It was better. It was real. It was mine. And as I locked my door that night, I thought about all the mothers out there who were where I had been, giving until they were empty, accepting crumbs of affection while providing banquets of support, believing that if they just loved hard enough, sacrificed enough, gave enough, they would finally be seen and valued. I wanted to tell them, you are already enough, your love is already valuable, and you deserve to be treated with the same kindness and respect you give to everyone else. Setting boundaries isn't cruelty, it's self-preservation. It's teaching the people in your life how to treat you. It's modeling for your children what healthy relationships look like. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop. Stop giving. Stop accommodating. Stop making yourself small so others can feel big. Stop accepting being treated as less than you are, because you matter. Your feelings matter. Your dignity matters. And anyone who can't see that doesn't deserve the gift of your unconditional love. My daughter threw me out of her Mother's Day celebration, so I threw her out of my bank account. Some people still call me cruel. But most people, the ones who have lived long enough to understand the difference between love and codependency, between helping and enabling, between sacrifice and self-destruction, they call me brave. And you know what? They're right. It was the bravest thing I've ever done. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Because I finally loved myself as much as I loved my daughter. Because I finally understood that I couldn't pour from an empty cup, that I couldn't light myself on fire to keep someone else warm. The woman I am today would do it all again, not because I wanted to hurt Emma, but because I needed to save myself. And in saving myself, I saved our relationship too. It took time, pain, and brutally honest work on both sides. But we got here, to a place of mutual respect, genuine appreciation, and honest love. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story, if you're standing on someone's porch with gifts they don't appreciate and love they don't acknowledge, I want you to know something. You can leave. You can set down that burden. You can cancel that payment, both literally and metaphorically. You can say no. You can require respect. You can demand to be valued. And yes, it might cost you. It might cost you relationships you've invested years in. It might cost you the illusion of family harmony. It might cost you the role you've played for so long you forgot it was a role. But what you'll gain is worth it. You'll gain yourself, your dignity, your peace, your freedom. And maybe, just maybe, you'll gain something else too. Real relationships, built on mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. Genuine connections where you're valued for who you are, not what you provide. It won't be easy. The bravest things never are. But I promise you, from someone who stood where you're standing and made the choice you're afraid to make, it will be worth it. You are worth it. Remember that. Always remember that. And if no one else tells you today, let me be the one to say it. You are enough, just as you are. You deserve love that doesn't require you to diminish yourself. You deserve respect that doesn't have conditions attached. You deserve to be seen, valued, and appreciated. Don't settle for less. I did, for too long. Don't make my mistake. Be brave. Set the boundary. Choose yourself. You won't regret it. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever sacrificed until there was nothing left, please share this story. Let's create a space where every voice is heard and every sacrifice is acknowledged. Subscribe to Julia's Stories for more tales of resilience, transformation, and the courage to choose yourself. Because every story we share reminds us that no matter how broken we feel, we always have the power to rebuild. And remember, setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival.